Chill.
Hey, man. This your boy, Mr. Church, man. Turn up with me.
The old me gone, the new me here. I walked on water without no fear. Somebody better tell the world this my year. The old me gone, the new me here. I walked on water without no fear. Somebody better tell the church this my year. The old me gone, the new me here. I walked on water without no fear. Somebody better tell the devil this my year. The old me gone, the new me here. I walked on water without no fear.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fellowship Hall. I am your man, Reverend Ty. We are here once again, another week, new topics. We got some great topics today that we're going to dive into. So with no hold up, I'd like to introduce, first of all, my regular that's always on here with me, my man, my brother from another mother, Reverend Morel.
Hello, everybody. How you doing, Ty?
What's going on?
I see you doing. You might be. You okay? You under the weather? You got that Tar Heel hat on. You all right?
That should make you feel good. Should make you feel good. Yeah. So, listen, we got another person with us tonight. Been trying to get him on here for a minute now. My brother, Dr. Gary Harvey. How you doing, Gary?
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Hope you gentlemen are doing well today.
No
Absolutely.
problem at
Good.
all. No problem at all. So, we've been trying to get you on here for a minute, man. And I don't know if you want me to call you Dr. Gary, Dr. Harvey, or just Gary.
Whatever works.
I do know that you've been going through it, and I thank God that He has seen you through. If you don't know, Rev, the last 2 months, it's been 2 months, right? Since you've had
December I had a mild heart attack. Then January I had my first stroke. February had a second. Good Friday had a third, and then just had another this past Wednesday.
Yeah. And he's on here with us tonight. So I thank God that,
Thank God for you.
It's okay. And
praying for you for sure.
So he already know, I've been chatting with him back and forth. We definitely has been, keeping him in our prayers. But he's a blessing. He's a blessing. God has touched his life. Everything you going through, brother, most people don't make it through that, so we know that God is over you. He got something special for you, man. He got something special for you. So, Gary has his own podcast called Reflection. That he actually go on every Monday night, also, right?
Usually every Monday night at 7 p.m. Yeah,
at 7 p.m. I've already agreed to be a guest on his podcast. I'm sure Gary Reverend Morel would love to.
Don't let him wear the hat though. Don't let him wear the hat when
unless it's the greatest university to ever grace this country, I'd rather not see it. So unless it's that big UM.
My goodness.
That ruined Maze.
Oh goodness.
All right, dude. All right. So okay.
Winners and best.
Yeah.
Okay. So that but it's three ACC teams right here.
Oh no, that's he that Michigan fan.
Listen, we've all fallen short. So
big blue. That's the truth. I can't even talk about my team right now. So
FSU.
Yeah.
My team been at the bottom so long. It's okay to talk about them.
Listen, ain't nowhere but up for FSU to go this year. Honestly, you can't drop much further.
You're right about that. That was terrible. I don't know how you go from being that good to being that terrible in 1 year. 1 year.
Yeah, that was something else.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yes, sir. All right, fellas. So we are gonna dive into it, man, because I know these topics, you know, I think we're gonna get a little deep in them, especially this first one. The first one, oh, the parting of Derek Chauvin. Would it be a slap in the face to communities of color?
The conversation is a slap in the face to
The conversation,
even the consideration of a pardon is a slap in the face. In my not that I'm anyone, but in my personal opinion, the conversation and even the consideration is a slap in the face to communities of color.
I got you. Most definitely. It's crazy because it's being pushed by Ben Shapiro. It's being pushed by him, and he has over 50,000 signatures on the petition. And
that in itself, not to cut you off, I apologize, but that in itself shows how reprobate this country actually is. In all honesty, like that, and the recent GoFundMe for the lady who was using the slur with the child in the playground. Yeah. The fact that she raised that much money that quickly, that in itself shows the condition of this country and where the mindset of this country is. And it's sad, it's deplorable. Yeah. And I hate hearing, because I hear it all the time, especially, and you know, I mean, not sure if you guys know or not, but you know, I'm a white guy.
What?
So in a lot of the environments that I'm in, when the topic of racism comes up, it obviously gets very uncomfortable for some people, especially for a lot of white people. Right. And I think that is because, number one, they don't know how to respond to it, because I think oftentimes in responding to it, they have to acknowledge that it's real. And I think that in itself is difficult for some, because then in acknowledging that it's real, they realize that they've been guilty of it in some aspect and in some fashion. And I think because it's uncomfortable and they don't know how to address it, the conversation all of a sudden becomes, well, we keep talking about it. If we stop talking about it, it wouldn't be a problem. Well, it's a problem because we don't address it. And we keep talking about it like it's this ghost in the corner that's not really there. And the fact of the matter is, it's real, it's tangible, and it has so many negative effects on communities. That in itself is just indicative of the direction that the country's going. Like, I was having a conversation with somebody not too long ago, and somebody was like, you know, I can accept, I can't really accept the argument, but you can sooner make an argument to me that, like, oh, well, Trump's not racist. Well, he might not be, but he definitely made racist much more bold, and made it okay.
Yep.
You know, now, regardless of where you stand, you know, as far as immigration is concerned, but the fact that we throw the doors open for 59 white South Africans to come in with a protected refugee status, but as quickly as this country can, we're trying to throw out as many black and brown people as possible. You know, you can't tell me that that's not rooted in racism. You can't. Christian nationalism itself has its roots in racism.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people don't want to acknowledge this. Western Christianity, the American church, is rooted in racism, and people don't want to talk about this. They don't want to acknowledge it because it's an embarrassing part of our past. It's that like, if you have you know, that uncle or that cousin that did something that, like, it just embarrasses the whole family. Like, you don't want to keep talking about it. You want to keep bringing it up. But not bringing it up doesn't make it go away. Doesn't make it any less real. And that's the problem. I think our society acts like if we pretend it's not really there, it'll just go away. And so instead of addressing it, we try to run away from it. We try to cover it up. We try to change the color. You know, we try to paint a different color instead of just accepting it for what it is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Real?
Yes. This is a tough one, man. So, you know, of course you talked about Ben Shapiro. At one point he was, you know, on the other side, trying to make sure that people were getting that people were getting the proper justice. Now he's on the flip side of that. The fact, like, we're having this conversation, even talking about it potentially happening, is not only a slap in the face. It is a true realization of the way that evil works, like in real time. Like, we really get to see it, because what they're in fact saying is what you saw isn't really what you saw. What you experienced isn't really what you experienced. Let me tell you what your experience actually is. And that is racism in itself, right? And you're trying to tell, you know, someone who's experiencing something that it's not real, or you're perceiving it wrong. You're nearly not, it's really not as bad as you're saying it is. So what you're seeing, what you saw on, you know, on the video, when you see a man with his knee on the neck of another man, and the man is asking to breathe, and you're not allowing him to, you're seeing the disregard. You're seeing not even just of a human being, but a disregard of life in general. As you sit there with your knee on his neck, and you proudly, you know, kind of almost scoff at the people who are trying to tell you get off his neck. You're proud about what you're doing. And then now, as these things are coming, let alone the fact that you pled guilty, but now that is coming back, and you have people who are actually out here trying to get you off of this. It's just the way that evil works. Like, it's, at the time people were saying, you know, it was George Floyd's fault. Like, it was because he was on drugs. It was because he was acting out. It was this, that, and other. It was all these other things. Then you come to find out, okay, that isn't the case. This was murder, basically. And now you're saying murder isn't the same for everyone. And so the evil that you see, and the fact that people who can call themselves Christians, again, people use that moniker all the time, doesn't mean you are, can call themselves Christian and then say human life is only worth it if it benefits me.
Right.
That just shows you the evil of this country, man. You know, it's not really, I won't even say the country. It's just the evil in people, and it just so happens to be there's so many of those who are in a position of power, that it gives the country itself a stain or a black eye.
Yeah. So one of the things that he is doing, right? He is trying to put a black eye on the whole Black Lives Matter, right? And to be honest, I don't agree with everything, you know, that when you start reading up on Black Lives Matter, I don't believe everything that, you know, that behind the stuff, that some of the stuff that they do. But I do know that incident caused the movement, right?
It caused an international movement.
Yeah, true. So a Black Lives Matter movement. And what he is saying, and we saw this when it was going on live at the time. But what he is saying is that the Black Lives Matter movement caused over $2 billion worth of damage, and he called it the Black Lives Matter riots, right? And it's just shocking to me, because I remember that there was more peaceful protesting than riots, right? Now, there was some that came after the peaceful protesting, you know, people, you know, and that's been years. I mean, we can go back to what's his name? Rodney King. Rodney King. We can go back to Rodney King, you know what I'm saying? So that's always been in effect. And I never agreed with the whole rioting over that. Now, granted, some people would say that's the only way you can get their attention, right? But the riotings that happened during that whole George Floyd murder, it happened after the peaceful protesting, and it was few. It wasn't a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is saying that the whole Black Lives Matter riots, he is calling the whole movement just riots, that it cost over $2 billion. So what it says to me is that he is saying that America arrested and prosecuted and sentenced an innocent man while you had all these Black criminals going around destroying our country. Right? And so he paints this picture of Black America is evil and white America is good.
I hate to say this, but that's always been the narrative for this country. As unfortunate as that is, that has been the narrative. If you look at various even denominations that would fall under the grand umbrella of Christianity, there are entire denominations that teach that the dark color of the skin is indicative of sin. And that, you know, they're innately evil, and that's a representation of that's why there's the black skin color, and you know, that type of thing. And it's the whole the whole exploration, right, and the colonization that took place. The at the time, the Catholic Church sanctioned essentially these countries being able to go into these what they claimed were newly discovered lands, and essentially doing what they wanted to do to the indigenous populace, in order to convert them to Christianity, because they didn't view them as equals. They didn't view them as actual human beings and people.
Right.
Because you didn't believe what I believed, you were less than an individual. You didn't carry as much value as I carry, because you didn't look like me, you didn't talk like me, you didn't, you know, sound like me, you didn't worship like me. So you're not as valuable as I am. That's been the narrative for an extremely long time within this country and colonization in general. And unfortunately, has been a stain on Christianity. And when I say Christianity, I use that as a very blanket and broad umbrella, not necessarily. So like oftentimes when I talk to individuals, especially my peers in ministry, I reference the American church and the church in America. There are those, in my opinion, those are two completely different things. There is the American church, which unfortunately is the church that has been caught up in Christian nationalism, caught up in that cult of Christian nationalism, where dogmatic tradition is more important than scriptural doctrine. And then you have the church, you have the American church, caught up in that dogmatic tradition. But then you have the church in America, which is still trying to be centered on that scriptural doctrine, and still trying to follow and actually walk out a life that is indicative to Christ and the commandments that Christ left us. Unfortunately, the American church has perverted that. And we paint this narrative that we need, you know, entire political campaigns are run on, let me create a scapegoat. For Nazi Germany, it was the Jews. For Trump, for this last campaign, it was immigrants. You know, it's always somebody else's fault. And what I hear with the whole, okay, well, Black Lives Matter. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the organization and everything that the organization stands for, but what that movement stood for and the reason that the match was lit for that movement, I 100% stand behind. You know, and when I hear that, oh, well, wait, there was all this damage that was done by these protests and these demonstrations, you're telling me that a man's life is worth less than that property. I have a problem with that. Yeah. I have a huge problem with that. Because I can promise you, if it was my child that was in that situation, the entire city burned to the ground. You know, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what would happen.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and I know I don't pretend. My wife and I were just talking about this yesterday, I think it was, but I don't pretend that I don't operate in white privilege. I don't pretend that. There's a lot of areas of my life that I benefit from that, and I don't pretend that that doesn't exist. I also understand that that white privilege affords me an opportunity to go to certain spaces and say certain things that other individuals could not, just because of their color or because of their ethnic background. That I don't have to face the same consequences necessarily that they may have to. I understand that, and so I feel a level of responsibility to be vocal about what's not right. um you know, I can't in good conscience sit back and be like, oh well, you know, oh, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like, I've heard stuff like that. Like, to me, that's so ignorant. Oh, he should have complied. Really? Well, let me ask you this. Well, I don't even have to ask the question. I can pose it as a statement. If the January 6th riots, if all those patriots on January 6th that stormed the Capitol, if they were black, they wouldn't be breathing.
Nope.
That's the
Not even
reality.
close. Yep.
That's reality.
Exactly.
Not right, but that's reality.
Absolutely.
I have no hesitation in saying that, none whatsoever. It pains me to say that, because we shouldn't still be at that place.
Yeah.
We shouldn't, and not just as a country, but just as individuals, we shouldn't be at that level anymore. We really should not be at that level, and we still are. It's like it's something we can't seem to break free from. And honestly, I personally believe it's because many people don't want to break free from it, because it's a
Absolutely.
whole lot easier for me to blame black and brown folk for the reason that I can't financially get in a better position, than to acknowledge the fact that I'm not qualified to get a better job, nor am I disciplined enough to get and maintain that better job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier for me to find a scapegoat, and so that's what I'll do. Unfortunately, we have politicians that they pinpoint that in areas and districts and states. They pinpoint that, and they feed off of that fear and off of that hatred, and we just allow it to keep happening. And I remember asking a group of people when George Floyd was murdered in the small town I lived in at the time. I actually ended up running for mayor in that particular town. It has less than 13,000 people, primarily white Republican area. I was one of the only preachers that was involved in any of the protests that were taking place. The some of the other preachers didn't get involved until it was beneficial for them, until they were able to get a spotlight. Then all of a sudden they wanted to be vocal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Neither
We
here
can
nor
see.
there at the end of the day. But that's one thing that I've never shied away from. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Um, and I can say that that was the same year, if I'm not mistaken, where the discussion about making Juneteenth a federal holiday really
Yep.
started getting traction.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, I love them to death, but my parents were not familiar with what Juneteenth was, what it represented, what took place, and they took the time to educate themselves. And I was actually very proud of that. Like, they didn't take a stance on, oh well, why do we need this? Why do you like? They didn't start spewing that kind of foolishness. They educated themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And but when we have an entire society that's trying to limit our education, or not just limit, but whitewash the education and completely rewrite history, it makes it difficult to ensure people are properly informed. And it's hard to combat hate if you don't have proper information and proper education. It's very difficult to address it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it
Mm.
definitely is. You said something about that fear. Again, you see it working in two prongs right now. Like, of course, you see it from the political space, but you actually see it in the church, the American
Mhm.
church portion as well. And
Mhm.
anytime you have to describe a church with anything before it other than Christ, that lets you know where where the true focus is, right?
Mhm.
Uh, but they're using the fear of not being in line
Mhm.
with what they believe, as that's going to send you to hell. So they're using hell as that tool to
Mm-hmm.
try to get you in line with what they're talking about. But then, of course, you have the fear factor from the political realm. And this is nothing new, because this is one of the tools of the enemy that we've seen since the world's been turning,
Right.
using that fear in order to make you and put you in a position to make decisions that really are not godly decisions. And so
Mm-hmm.
we see that now. And what this, our topic here is really doing is setting fear on both sides. Think
Mhm.
about from a person of color's perspective, if they can do this, what
Right.
can't they do to us? Is
Right.
so that's the fear. Then on the other side, you're saying, well, if we, people could be saying, if we don't do this, they're going to keep coming toward us. So we have to stop them. And this was one of those tipping points in history. If we
Mm-hmm.
can erase this, we can erase what that meant. And so
Right.
you have the fear being played on both sides, which is definitely the enemy. Of course, we know that. But the saddest part about it, was, to your point, is just, where's the church in all of this, man? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're not we're not consolidated. We're not working together in this. You have your black churches versus your white churches. You have some white preachers, you have some black preachers, but you don't have that togetherness of the true church coming and saying right is right and wrong is wrong.
The
And
the
it's
the
crazy that
church
this is happening.
the church used to be a catalyst for social change.
Hmm.
They used to be a catalyst for social change. The church used to be, and not just our country, but over in Europe.
Hmm.
And they're not. It's not anymore.
Nope.
Um, it has become one of the most segregated places in our country.
Hmm.
Um, whether by design or not, that's what's happened.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and I remember serving in a church years ago, and the pastor used to call it a multicultural church because I was there. It was just me. I was the only one that was different, and so it was a multi. He officially called it a
Wow.
multicultural church,
Okay.
which honest, it was valid. At that point, I mean, but I get it. But at the same time, it was kind of sad that that was even a joke.
Hmm.
you know but I think it's natural for people to gravitate towards what they're familiar with,
Absolutely.
especially when you talk about faith circles, because when it comes to our faith, I personally believe it makes it a whole lot easier for me to continue to build and strengthen my faith when I can relate to other people that have experienced similar things to me. One thing that I can't relate to as much as I might want to, and I try to explain this to people. um um my wife and I were talking one day about how sometimes we'll be out and we'll get different looks from people. And I mean, I know it's because, hey, it's a mixed couple, but honestly, at the same time, it's one of those, how'd he end up with her type of thing. Like he shouldn't be with her, type of thing. Like, she's out of his league. Like, I know that. And we were talking about that one day, and she was like, "No, that's not it." We were going through a McDonald's drive-through, and the girl at the drive-through said something, and I was like, "No, my wife was asking a question." She's like, "That's your wife?" Like, all surprised. And but it's easier, I feel, to like strengthen our faith if I can relate to the people I'm in church with and in service
Hmm.
with and worshiping with, because they have a better understanding of what it is I have to experience every day, whether it's going to work, whether it's going to the grocery store, whether it's going to the corner store, just living in the neighborhood. They have a better understanding of the struggles and the obstacles that I face every day. So I
Mhm.
think that inadvertently our churches have become segregated because of stuff like that, not just because of our own individual or our country's mindset and thought process. It's not always a negative thing.
Yeah.
I
No, you're
think it's
right.
just it was just a natural occurrence that
Yeah,
tended to happen.
there's definitely that. There's definitely the history that created part of
Hmm.
it, right?
Right,
But the continuance of it isn't always just because we don't want to be around each other. There's
right,
preference, there's style, of course, and then like you said, if I'm experiencing something, and I know this person, based on our similarities, will experience it the same way. See, we can all have problems at work, but we may not necessarily experience it the same way.
Right.
So I can have a conversation with this person and they can understand me without me having to write a 10-page essay to get them to try to understand. Sometimes it's just the nod of the head. You're like, you understand stuff, right?
Exactly.
So those are the things, and I absolutely agree with you. Those things do happen. And that's okay. I mean, the Lord has set up, many preachers, many different ways of, reaching people. So that is really not the issue. The issue is when there is something that is wrong,
Right.
we're not saying together, we're all saying this is wrong. Some of us are saying wrong. There's other people who are saying wrong, and some are saying, well, let me wait and see which side is going to win, and then I'll jump in on the winning side. Like that's where we have more of a problem.
And I think unfortunately that has become a result of the way that like the charismatic church has developed these celebrity preachers and these social media following, so to speak, and this whole cancel culture. Like a lot of times I feel like some preachers are afraid to stand up and say, no, it's wrong, because they're afraid of how it's going to hit the bank account.
Absolutely.
Let's just call it what it is.
Absolutely.
That's true.
And being in ministry, there's a level of understanding that I have to that. But at the same time, I also have to say that I can't accept that, because I understand when God calls you to something, he's going to provide. And if you know you're called to it, all you need to do is be obedient. He'll take care of the rest. Regardless of who gets, their feathers ruffled or frustrated, whatever the case may be, God still, if you're in line with what he's called you to do, and you're in line obediently with what he's called you to do, and you're standing for what his word says, he's going to make sure that in the end you're taken care of. Now that might not be, a 6-bedroom house with a 3-car garage and 4 cars sitting out front in the driveway. That might not be what getting taken care of looks like. And this whole celebrity preacher mentality and world that we've created in the charismatic church, the name it and claim it and prosperity gospel that we've used to pimp the pulpit is extremely unfortunate. And I think because of that, it's caused many churches, many pastors to be hesitant to preach the truth and speak the truth because of that. And I think the other aspect is they're afraid to quote unquote become political. Because I don't feel that politics should flood or pollute the church. But I do believe the church has a responsibility to address certain topics that fall within the realm of politics. Absolutely. I believe we have a scriptural responsibility to do so. I mean, Jesus did that when he walked the earth. Absolutely. So we have a responsibility to do that. But I've also heard pastors get up and demonize Democrats and spend more time talking about Trump than they do Christ. Like, that's a problem.
Absolutely. It's not about the politics. It's about what is right and wrong. So when it crosses that threshold, that's when we should be speaking up. And again, both of the dominant parties in America are corrupt. They're both jacked up. Like neither one of them are right. Like it's no. And so to try to say one is right, one is wrong, these things are crazy. But again, it's just tough, because again, we have to, having these conversations are good. People learning and understanding is also good. But when you see things like this, it just becomes disheartening when there's even a thought that, at this point in America, that we would still say that someone we visibly watch the life going out of this person, and we're saying,
we're still saying
it ain't that bad.
I want to go back to something. And I'm gonna just pull out, like, for me, growing up, I caught minimal racism, right? Growing up where I'm from, I caught minimal racism. I mean, we used to get words thrown at us, racial slurs thrown at us. But as I got older, I didn't really face a lot of racism. I don't know if that's because I can't say I stayed in my lane, because I had friends from all races. but I never denied that racism existed, right? Because I had people around me that faced it more.
Mhm.
My grandparents told me what they went through. You know, my parents, my mom, my father. My father was in a group called the Wilmington 10. If you ever read up on that, and so I never denied that racism existed. You said that you recognize that you can operate in white privilege, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of people that do not believe white privilege exists on
And
both sides, whites and
I
blacks.
feel like a lot of people don't believe it exists because they think it's specifically referencing a financial status. And so because they specifically feel like it keys in only for finances, they don't. And because, well, I'm white and I'm not wealthy, so I don't have any white privilege. What privilege do I have? They don't understand it. So one thing that I try to, when I talk about it, one of the things that I do is I try to give an example of something I've personally experienced. One thing I've always said, and I'll say until I don't have another breath in my body, is that a man with an experience is never at the mercy of a man with an argument. You can't tell me what's not real if I've already experienced it.
Right,
And
right.
so one thing that I do is there was a young man that I was close to years ago here in Jacksonville, when my first round of living in Jacksonville, and a young black man. And there was one night, the one side of town that he lived on. I had just recently bought a Dodge Charger, 2009 Dodge Charger at the time, and I took him home from work one night, and was driving in his neighborhood. I got pulled over, and cop pulled us both out of the car, and we were about the same age. The only thing different between the two of us, we both are at this point are college educated, both had full-time jobs, made decent money. Um, Only difference was our skin color, and he had locks, and I had a fade. That's really the only difference between the two of us.
Right,
Um, I was standing outside the squad car getting a lecture from the cop, and him wanting to know why I was in that neighborhood, because there was only two reasons a white guy would be in that neighborhood: either selling or buying some type of drugs.
right.
Um, Now, while I was outside getting that lecture from the cop, he was put in the back of the squad car in handcuffs.
Wow,
Neither one of us had anything on our record except maybe a speeding ticket.
wow,
It wasn't like he had an
wow.
unpaid ticket and he had a warrant or something like that, or like he
Right,
had some
right,
long rap sheet or anything like that. And so you can't tell me it doesn't exist. I've experienced it.
right,
That's the
right.
only reason I didn't end up in the back of that car. You
Okay.
can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah. So Rev, I've heard it. I've heard it from our people, from black people that say white privilege don't exist. All we have to do is work hard, and you can accomplish anything that you want. And so they don't believe that white privilege exists.
They,
Come,
see, the problem isn't whether they think they believe it's existing or not. Like the issue is when people think about privilege, they think about extra.
Hmm.
What is happening and what we're talking about is just a label for what is the norm. And so,
Mhm.
because it's the norm, they don't really see it as something extra. So it's easier to say because you can't put your hand on it necessarily. So this is just what it is. So they can say there is opportunity, and there is opportunity. And working hard is one of those things that can help you when the opportunity comes, if it comes. But hard work a is not equal to opportunity. There's a difference. Because if I was let's just say I wanted to go to Miami right now. Here in Jacksonville, wanted to go to Miami, and I'm started running really hard. I'm running fast as I can. But if I'm running as fast as I can north, I'm never going to get there. Hard work don't make that happen. You have to have direction, you have to have help. There's other things that are involved. And so when you're in a society that says based upon the name that's on that resume, if it sounds like it is someone that is of color that may not be like me, that may not have a similar understanding of things that I may, or just somebody I may not be able to bond with as easily, it's less likely for me to call that person in for an interview than another one. That's where it comes in at. It's not always easily seen. So what is the norm versus the privilege is just the naming thing. But I think some people on our side, they don't really see it, or they don't want to accept it, because there are people on both sides who say, it's a crutch, something to lean on as a crutch and a reason why they're lazy and stuff like that.
Excuse.
And there's people of every race, every color in all of the world. Lazy people have no color. They're just lazy people, just lazy people. But they can find as many excuses as they want. But I believe that's one of the reasons that they may look at it that way.
Yeah,
I think a good example of a white privilege hire, for example, is our current Secretary of Defense. Like there's no qualification that man has that he should be sitting in that seat. As a combat veteran, that sickens me. In all honesty, absolutely sickens me. Or even when asked about generals that were removed from their post, and it was strictly based on their race. He couldn't even directly answer that question. He moved on to a different reporter in the middle of that interview. That in itself is a perfect example. We went from DEI hires to DUI hires, and it's sickening to me. It really is.
Wow.
But if we're running a race and I put 5-pound ankle weights on you, and I'm not wearing those weights, I have privilege in that race.
Yes.
And no amount of hard work is going to allow you to overcome certain obstacles that are put in your way and that aren't put in mine just because of my race. And that's the reality behind it. Rev, like you were talking about the application, the name on the application. I used to work for a collection agency, and I can tell you 110%, there were general managers at this collection agency that did not want to even interview individuals based on the name that was on the application. 110%. And I know the recruiters from those companies would, co-sign that statement, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had the whole situation, I think it was Denny's. They were like coloring in the E on the application a certain color, depending on the ethnicity of the applicant.
That's crazy.
There was a whole lawsuit and a whole thing that came out about them that year about that. Those are things where that was a level of privilege that was removed from the individuals that were trying to apply and get that job that very may well could have been qualified. That now, because of their ethnicity, were being denied that opportunity. They were being denied that privilege. And it's difficult. Like when I walk into a grocery store and I walk past a single mom and her child in the grocery store, she doesn't grip her purse or grab her child and pull her child closer to her. If I'm walking down the street and I happen to pass them, I can't say that for other individuals that I've been with when we've been walking down the street.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's a level of white privilege that I experienced. I don't have to experience those reactions because of the color of my skin. That's the reality behind it. And I'm not arrogant enough to deny that. I'm not arrogant enough, naive enough. Reality is reality. And until we start acknowledging it, we can't start changing things.
Correct. That's correct.
And what's funny, and then we're going to switch gears, but what's funny is the last example that you just gave about walking down the street, blacks have bought into that also, to the point where we black women would clench onto their purse, or black people will lock their doors if young black men with dreads or whatever walking past. Like we bought into that too, but if let a white guy come walking past, we're good. You ain't locking doors. You
I
ain't
lock my
gonna,
doors on everybody because people crazy
ah,
nowadays. People crazy nowadays. It's a whole other world. These people be flipping out for no reason. People,
Crazy out
hey,
here in the
somebody look at
streets.
somebody crazy. They didn't get an extra pickle on a cheeseburger and they ready to lose it. Like I'm locking the doors on everybody.
you don't know.
You seen that movie Falling? Is it Falling Down? Is
Falling
that what it
down,
is?
yes, Michael Douglas.
With Michael Douglas, yeah, he goes in
Yes.
and can't get breakfast that morning and
That
absolutely
was
loses his
crazy.
mind.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I love that, man. I think I seen that movie maybe 15 times.
It really is a good movie.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna switch gears, but I think that conversation dealing with that, it actually went deeper than I thought it would, but I'm glad it did because it was definitely a conversation that needed to get out, and I didn't want to interrupt y'all guys because it was something that needed to come out. Because if we see our government right now, the things that they're doing to basically to rewrite history, basically, right? So definitely love y'all guys on that one. All right, so our next topic, faith in danger when worship becomes a battleground. I want to deal with this from two perspectives. One, when worship becomes a battleground physically. Now we know that the physically has a spirit behind it. But the reason I say spiritually, we do know that, over the past years, we've had a lot of church shootings, a lot of church shootings going on. Here in the last couple of months, we had some church shootings that we really didn't hear about, right? We didn't hear about too much. I didn't hear about the one that was in Mississippi, the Empowering Ministry Christian Center, where the deacon got killed, which he was the head of the security, and he got killed by he was trying to protect the kids. Now they was at a Easter function. 3 other people was injured there. One had life-threatening, had to be flown out. And then they had the church that was in Mexico where seven young people were killed. And they was at a festivity also. So dealing with that, all right. So when worship becomes a battleground physically, let me ask you a question. Should churches begin to have armed security? And I know some churches already have that, but what are your views on armed security in the church? Real.
Okay, I'll go first. I believe based upon where you're at, where you're at, what your surroundings, you have to be vigilant. So there is a part of that. So do I personally feel like everybody needs to walk around with the gun or no? No. But I would say that there should be if you're going to do that, it needs to be done in a way where you can make sure that people are trained, people have the background checks, they have annual training on how to de-escalate situations and doing all those things. It shouldn't be just, hey, you 3 guys volunteered to be on security. You have a license for a gun. Okay, you can be on security. Like, it has to be deeper than that. So I do believe that, but I do think it also should be a very, very last resort, only in the opportunity to save others' lives when it comes to the church. And the reason why I say that is the Bible tells us that there is nothing that can overcome us that is common to man. And if there is anything, that he will give us either a way to bear it or a way of escape. And we look at that and we look at it as if we look at it short-sightedly. I'll say it that way. Mm-hmm. Because if we are as Christians, we understand that this is not the end. This is honestly just, this is the life that we live, but we have an eternity that we are going to sometimes. And we've seen this over the years, throughout the years of martyrdom and all that, a way of escape is also death. Mm-hmm. And so we can't necessarily feel as though we have to be like everyone else. But do we need to be prepared? I do believe in preparation. I do believe the understanding of that, but there is a discernment that needs to be taught there is licensing and training that needs to be taught in order for that to take place, in my own opinion. That's just me. And again, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in this country. There's a lot of stuff going on worldwide.
Right.
But you also have to understand, if we are the ones to shoot first in an instance, what is that doing? Who is that hurting? Who are the people that we're going to impact in that case, right? And so there has to be more to it than just having that level of protection, whether with weapons, in my opinion. Now, me personally, I don't care about it. I don't care about it. Like, where we're, where our church is. We're in an area where drugs does happen. Even on our street, we've had, murders right up the street, like 2 corners away from us. Like, we've had that happen multiple times. So I get it. I understand. And some people are going to be afraid and all those things. I get it 100%. So I'm not saying that it shouldn't. I'm just saying, me personally, if it was up to me, I don't care about that, because my thing is, if I have to show love in such a way that I got to give my life, as much as I will love my wife and I love my kids, and I don't want to leave this earth at this particular time. There's things I want to still be able to accomplish and see and do all these other things.
Yeah.
If that's what he's calling me to do, then that's what he's calling me to do.
Right.
So I don't. So that's just my perspective. Not to say my perspective is correctly for everyone else. That's just for me. Right. So that's my opinion on it.
Okay. All right, Dr. Gary.
I used to, when I was in Bible college out in Ohio, I used to work security for the college and for the church, and the church would be considered a mega church. And so we had the little Secret Service earpieces and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The services, there was this whole checklist of things we had to do, perimeter checks and, green room checks and, like all kinds of stuff, and escorting the speaker, picking a speaker up and bringing them in, all these different types of things. And I think that in today's society, the reality of I hesitate to use the word necessity, but the reality that it may become a necessity, I think, is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it's going to be there, it needs to be done in excellence. There definitely needs to be proper training, and it needs to be recurrent training as well.
Yeah.
Because you can't just have somebody that knows how to put rounds down range be security in that instance, because then you're going to end up in the same situation we have when you have a trigger happy police officer. If they're not properly trained for the situation, you're going to end up in a worse situation. You're going to traumatize more people than you are protecting them. And sometimes mentally traumatizing and scarring them is worse than what could happen to them physically. And you have a responsibility to keep that in mind as well. And the ultimate goal is to maintain a smooth worship experience for the congregation. And that has to be the ultimate goal to anyone that's, operating in any type of security mindset when it comes to a church, in my thought process. So I don't see anything wrong with it necessarily. I think you have to be sensitive to the needs of your congregation and the reality of the environment that you're in, and adjust accordingly. But in adjusting accordingly, making sure that you're being responsible in those adjustments, making sure that you have properly qualified and trained staff in those roles, if that's the direction you're going to go. You can't, like a lot of churches like to cut corners on ministries that they don't view as important, because it's not a pulpit type ministry. So they don't view it as very important. So it doesn't get the proper time and training. This isn't a ministry that you can cut corners with.
Yep.
Right.
You have to treat it as if it's just as important as Sunday morning pulpit ministry.
Yeah. It's and I'm with both of you guys. I mean, if you're gonna have it, it definitely should be the training. And I think you said it, Rev, not just training on when to pull, when not to pull, but also training in learning how to de-escalate situations, bringing the temperature down.
Yep.
Talking folks down that are looking to, harm, who even have an issue. Because I number one, our number one protection that God has given us is love, right? So he said, love your enemies. so if we can de-escalate and show the love, maybe this person will put the gun down
Right.
and then sit in the pews,
Mm. Yeah, we can never lose sight in any instance, no matter how grave it may seem. We can never lose sight of the witness, of
That's
the
right.
testimony, right? It's always got to be about God's glory. It can't be all about God's glory unless something detrimental to me is happening. That can't be. It has to be above all. And so, again, that's something that you have to the training is there, but I think there's another significant issue even with that, right? You do all the training, great, you do all that stuff, but as a leader in the church, and me being assistant pastor or the pastor, every so often you need to sit down with these people and you need to talk to them, and you need to understand what's going on with them. You need to have conversations with people, because just because I've had all this training, maybe me and my wife are at odds right now for the last 3 months, and it's getting bad. And maybe just when I come to church, I can't let my anger go. So I don't want to come with a place where I got this on my hip and I got all of this going on. Maybe this is not a time for you to be on the ministry right now. This is time to take a sabbatical, chill out. You know what I'm saying? So there is a responsibility of the leadership of the church to be involved in the ministry in such a way that we're protecting even the people on the ministry, to make sure that it's not overwhelming to them at a time where maybe it's not a season for them to be in it.
The other aspect I would say is to make sure that they still have an opportunity for worship, because when I was working security for this church and for this Bible college, I had to remove myself during the service. I was physically present in the service, but as far as spiritually worshiping or caught up in the sermon or caught up in the worship experience and really allowing myself to really get in the moment spiritually, that couldn't happen.
That's a great point.
And because of that, actually, I've become very reserved even now still, in the way that I worship. It's become much more reserved than what I used to be than before I worked in that area of ministry. Because for so long I had to emotionally remove myself from the experience.
Always watch.
Yeah, and you always were. You're watching everything, and picking up on key movements. And if everybody's getting up and moving to the right, but you got one person going to the left, why? But I can't be lost in a moment of worship because I might miss something like that.
Wow.
So I had to learn how to grow spiritually without experiencing that worship experience. That's not easy to do. And it's not easy to come back to once you remove yourself from it for so long. And it's almost like coming home from a deployment. You have to kind of ease yourself back into the family. You can't just all of a sudden, boom, I'm here, dad's back. It doesn't work that way. And not only am I processing my own combat experience, but I have to get them to understand that, hey, I'm back to where I'm at. I have to relearn them. I have to relearn, those emotions, those conversations have to take place. And that never happened with me with this other ministry. And that's something that I still feel the effects from even now. And
those are two great points. Just having someone that's on that ministry and to acknowledge the things that they may be going through, sitting down with them, because that can affect all kinds of decisions, on how you handling situations, and then to make sure that they properly get the worship time that they need, not just always every Sunday. I'm on my post and I'm never getting fed. Man, those are two great points, and I didn't even think about that as the question was being posed. But two great points, fellas. So we're gonna because we almost out of time. So I want to touch this last one because I think it's very important. So faith in danger when worship becomes a battleground spiritually, right? So last week we spoke on Hassan al-Hakam, right? And we talked about the movement that's behind him, the backing that he's getting, how many people is coming to support him, and how he talks about the United States as being Antichrist, and then all this stuff. Well, just this week, and I spoke to you briefly about it, Rev. Just this week, I'm at one of the food trucks. I'm just going to grab me a little something from the food truck, and a gentleman walks up. Him and his wife walks up, and they're I point them to the menu. This was their first time there. Point them to the menu. They ordered. Once they finish ordering, he comes and stands beside me, and he asked me, did I have a cell phone? He didn't ask me my name. He didn't ask me how I was doing. He asked me, did I have a cell phone? I had left my cell phone in the shop. He said, well, when you get a chance, look this up. Now, look up Gabriel Mission. He spells Gabriel different than the Bible does. But he proceeds to tell me that he is Gabriel and he is the Messiah. And he says that not this
the guy at the food truck,
the guy that came to get some food. Now he's an older gentleman walking with a cane, and he tells me that he can't be killed, he can be hurt, but he has been preaching all around the world. If you go onto his website, you will see he talks about how the government tries to stop him from speaking, or how they offer them all kinds of money and stuff like that. But now, needless to say, I did not go on the website. I did not want to open that at all. Something, discernment, Holy Spirit tell me don't even touch that website, right? But I believe that is, we spoke about, like I said, Hassam al-Hakim last week, and then I run into this guy this week, and which tells me that there's a evilness movement that's going on right now. And what I experienced with that gentleman was only what I've seen maybe on social media, on TV. I've never had that personally with someone come up to me and say, hey, I'm the Messiah. And he goes on to speak badly about Christ. He said, I'm not this dead guy that everybody worships, right? So I've only seen that social media. So there's a movement that's going on that I believe that the church need to acknowledge and not run away from. To not one, to expose it, two, for the protection of the people, right? Y'all thoughts on this?
So I'll say this. I feel like in circumstances like this, a lot of times the church stays quiet because it's not founded on solid doctrine to begin with. So it doesn't have the understanding or discernment to be able to speak to things like this, in my personal opinion. And like, we have so many churches that have started because somebody in the congregation didn't like what the pastor was preaching, or the pastor didn't let me preach when I wanted to preach. And I know I'm called to preach. I'm just going to go start my own church. And so that's what we have. We have a lot of churches that have pastors that have no covering. They have no spiritual lineage. They have no understanding of spiritual authority. They're submitted to nobody. And so there's no accountability. There's no true understanding of doctrine. There's no understanding of basic hermeneutics. And so because they can't really get in the word and break it down and study the word themselves, they have no level of discernment, because they can't test the spirits against the word, because they don't know the word. And I feel like every few years there's something like this that happens. It might be on a small scale or a large scale, but I feel like every few years there's something to this effect that happens. And I feel like it's because the church has lost its authenticity and its sincerity and its power, because it's lost its connection with God. And people are they're lost. They're crying out. They're at a place where they need help, and they're not getting it from the church. They're not getting that comfort from the church, that understanding from the church, because the church doesn't know how to deliver sound doctrine anymore. Absolutely. Unfortunately. So they reach out to wherever they can get that comfort and reassurance from. and they latch on to whatever sounds good, whatever feels good in the moment, and that's what ends up happening. And I feel like the only way to really combat that is with sound doctrine and biblical teaching. And until the church can get back to that and get back to it consistently, we're going to continue these types of cycles, unfortunately.
Yeah, the teaching in a lot of churches is very shallow, right? It's very happy. It's very, person centric, and
Fluffy
not
clouds
God
and pink
centric.
unicorns.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that has been lost in the church is the teaching of discernment. We tell people to have it, but we don't teach them how
We
to
don't tell
have
them
it.
how. We don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't teach
exactly.
them
We
how.
don't tell
Yeah.
them how, and we can't say that that's not how it's supposed to go. The Bible bears it out. Even Christ, as he was dealing with his disciples, as he was walking with them and talking with them, and remember there was the time where the man brought his, his son. He was getting thrown in the fire and all of that, and they were like, "Well, why couldn't we cast out, this demon?" And he had to teach them why. There's a way. There's certain things that you have to understand. There's some things that you can't just do based upon ritual or cognitive knowledge. There's things that are deeper than that, and he was showing them over and over and over again how to understand what is behind what you see, and that is why you're driving. Because even to the point, we just talked about this on Sunday. Pastor was preaching on this on Sunday, and again, where Peter tells Christ, nah, you ain't going to the cross, starts reprimanding Christ that you're not going to the cross, but he doesn't understand, because spiritually he doesn't at the moment understand what is happening. He's only dealing in the physical, and so we have to teach people how to operate those in the spiritual for that discernment, and we don't do it because it's difficult. Just what you were saying, Doctor, it is difficult because it takes time to teach people what true discernment is.
Well, it
how
takes
to discern.
it takes relationship. Like you can simplify it and be like, well, my sheep know my voice. Well, in order to know his voice, you need to know his word.
Yeah.
Because anything that's talking, you can test
Yeah.
against the word. If it doesn't line up against the word, then it's not him. Very,
Absolutely.
very simply, And I mean that it's a real simplified way to say it. And a lot of people don't like it because it's not flashy. It's not that feel good miracle. It's not that big testimony miracle.
And it's not as easy. It's not as easy. It's not something you just turn on and it's fine. It is something you have to walk in a consistent basis. And so that then it leaves the door open to what you were saying. The feel good. I can grab onto this. They understand me. He said the right thing at the moment. All those things. And we're going to see that until he comes back. Like that. This is not something that's going away. It's just at times you'll have bigger movements, smaller movements, but this isn't going away. And so that very thing lets us know that it's important for us to spend time there and help people understand, give them the solid foundation, because you can't always call your pastor. You can't always call your deacon. You're going to be there and you're going to have to be able to deal with it at that moment.
Yeah. Well, I like to call it midnight theology. When it's just what you believe and your problem, nobody else. That's your moment at midnight. Your midnight theology. It's just you, God, and what you say you believe in your circumstance. It's that rubber meets the road moment. Paul and Silas in the prison moment. It's just you, the prison, and God. What do you really believe when it comes down to it? And I'm not gonna lie. After this last stroke, laying in the hospital, I had one of those moments. Like, listen, like okay, God, like every 2 weeks, I'm dealing with this. Like, I'm doing what the doctors are telling me to do. I'm trusting and believing in you. I know what your word says. This isn't something I should have to keep dealing with. Like, and I get very raw and emotional when I pray. I tell people all the time, like when they talk, well, I can't pray. Well, if you can have a conversation, you can pray.
100%.
And people are like, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Well, first of all, there's no wrong thing, and if I'm angry, that's what God gets when I pray. If I'm happy, that's what he gets when I pray. If I'm confused, that's what he gets when I'm praying. If I'm sad, that's what he gets when I pray. And I know all of those emotions are okay because I was created in the image and likeness of God, which and I can see in his character as I read his word, he displays each one of those emotions. Yep. So I know it's okay for me to have them. like, Bible says, be angry yet sin not. It's okay to get angry. You just can't allow it to control your actions.
Absolutely.
That type of thing. So I have to, but I definitely had one of those moments where it was like, all right, this is what I say I believe, and I'm standing 10 toes on this. It is what it is. Like, God, you got to come through. Like, I can't keep doing this. Like, you got to come through. This is what you're telling the doctors. If you want, if it's something else that has to happen, then you need to tell the doctor something different. Because I can't. My doctorate's academic, not medical. I can't help them here. So I need you to give them whatever wisdom they need in order to help me deal with what I'm going through and what I'm dealing with.
Amen.
Type of thing, because I also know it takes a toll on my family, as well. It takes a toll on my wife, her having to deal with that and worry about that and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, my faith, I can't rely on her for my faith, and nor can she rely on me for hers. We can be there to strengthen each other's faith and support each other's faith. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what I believe and what she believes individually. Because when it's time for me to stand before God, I'm not standing there with her or with anybody else. Oh, well, my pastor said this, well, that's good. Peter, I know, Paul, I know, Jesus, I know, but who are you? Like, there's no confusion. You will know my name. Like, that's how I feel about it. When I get up in the morning, that's 110% how I feel. And, I love hearing, it's kind of a love-hate, hearing people, I need a word from God. Really? You got 66 books full of words. Open it up.
You got a lot. You got a lot.
There were pens specifically for you.
I'm pretty sure you ain't memorized them all yet. So.
Yeah, start reading. He's got a word for you in there. Just open it up and start reading.
Amen.
It doesn't need to come from the pulpit.
Amen. So I think one of the, and y'all both hit on it, that the church have not prepared.
We've lost the art of discipleship.
Yeah, for what's to come, right? We haven't prepared it for what's to come. We speak about the evilness of this world, and the most evil that a lot of us have seen is our government, right? But you got places, and I don't know if y'all guys looked at the list, the link that I sent y'all with the top 10 places where Christianity is. You cannot be a Christian and live in these places. And the Bible tells us that, it's going to be a time where we have to face this. And some places are already facing that. But have the church really prepared the people for situations like that, to where it's your faith or your life? Which one do you want to choose? Are you ready?
Not in America.
100% it has not. It has not. Because for us, it's not reality. Here in America, that's not reality. Like, when I listen to Christians in America talk about how persecuted they are, it's almost comical to me.
No, it's definitely comical.
It's like, you don't know what persecution is.
People not liking you, or didn't invite you to the party, or they unfriending you. That's not persecution.
What it is they don't want you to tell them how to worship. That's what it is at the end of the day. And honestly, there's nothing about Christianity that should be forced on another person.
Nope.
It's a decision that somebody has to make. But until I establish a relationship, I can't even help you with that, walk you into that decision, because it won't be real. You're not going to afford me the authority to speak into your life until I establish a relationship with you. But if all I ever do when I see you is tell you how wrong you are because of the life you live, and I'm so worried about decisions that you make about your personal life as if they affect my salvation, you're not going to hear anything I have to say, no matter how right I might be.
Exactly. The only part of Christianity should be forced on someone is the love that you give them, the love that you show them. That's it. That's it. You cannot force. And so it's sad that we haven't really prepared the people for the spiritual warfare. We don't understand. They don't understand what it is, to really be in a spiritual battle where your life is at stake.
Well, in all fairness,
Mhm.
it's hard to comprehend that if you've never experienced anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I can understand kind of what that is based on my time in combat. Like, I do XYZ or I don't.
Mhm.
I can understand that equation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been put in certain circumstances. Not that, oh, it's Jesus or die. I can't say I've been put in that situation, but I have been put in situations where I've had an equation where you either do X, Y, Z or you're going to end up dead.
Right.
Yep.
So I do understand that, but it's also like, individuals that they had an extremely abusive father. When they hear about God being, that's God the Father, they don't
Mhm.
create a positive image of God in their mind
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
because of
that's
that experience that they've had. And
That's
so the
very
same thing
wow.
is true for me to try to prepare you for that type of lifestyle when you don't have anything to compare it to kind of create that understanding.
Mhm.
It's hard to actually prepare you for that. The
yep.
only thing I can do is tell you about it and that
Right.
there's going to be a time,
Yep.
you know. But right now we have a lot of churches where, if the preacher, most preachers on Sunday mornings here in America, they close their service 23 times, they close the sermon.
Mhm.
If that preacher closes 24 times, it's the end of the world. Or if the air is not on 60 or not on 63 and it's 68 degrees in the sanctuary, it's just too hot, I can't be here, I'm not
Right.
coming next Sunday.
Right.
If it's raining outside a little bit, I'm not coming.
Yep.
If there's the slightest inconvenience, we throw church to the wayside,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
unfortunately. So it's hard to comprehend the importance of worship here in America because we've never been denied it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to understand, and people who play sports you get this analogy. At some point, you can practice and you can practice really hard, but it's
Hmm.
never the game.
Hmm.
It's never the
Right.
same intensity of the game,
It
and
was
so
it was the same
we can
thing when I
practice.
deployed when the same thing when I deployed to Iraq. It was like, it's kind of, what is it? I'm trying to think of who said it. Was it Bruce Lee said everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth? Or was that Mike Tyson
Mike
that
Tyson, I
said
think. Yeah,
Yep.
said that? Yeah, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the
I
mouth.
think I think he got it from Bruce Lee.
yeah,
Okay. Well, I know that like out in Iraq, it was it was good until that first artillery round landed and the first round started zipping by your head.
Right.
Because there's definitely a different sound when the rounds are leaving you than when they're coming towards you.
Mhm.
There's definitely a different sound. That in itself, it the moment it becomes real and that it's not training,
Mhm.
okay, you just start reacting. It's like muscle memory, but at the same time there's only so much you're prepared for.
Yep.
Mhm.
There's a lot that's OJT. Like, until it starts happening, you can't prepare for it.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
I believe that we have to prepare again, prepare the people for the spiritual warfare that is at hand, um, and also that's to come. And y'all both spoke on this. The pastors that's really preaching prosperity and stuff like that. Like they're not really helping on that aspect of getting people prepared for the actual spiritual warfare that's at hand. We see that
Most
it's not.
congregations, most congregations couldn't fast more than 6 hours if it came down to it. Or I remember when I was younger, I was going to there was a time I was going to a Spanish Pentecostal church,
Mhm.
yeah, Spanish Assemblies of God church, and they would have the Terry services, where you're praying all night long, Saturday night into Sunday morning, into the Sunday morning service,
Mhm.
and don't come up to the altar on Sunday talking about you need prayer. And one of the church mothers meets you at the altar and asks you what you need prayer for, and you say, I don't know, I just want prayer. I got told to sit back down. I don't know how many times. Sit down until you know what God wants you to do, or until you know what you want God to
Wow.
do in your life. Then come back up, and we'll pray for you.
Oh,
You know,
wow. Wow.
um, but it's because of church mothers like that my faith developed the way that it did. Because I
Mhm.
saw them pray, I saw them fast, I saw them tarry, I saw them, you know, lay prostrate before God in a service. I saw how they responded to worship. I listened to how they prayed. And I would, for a lack of better words, I would mimic that. I would parrot that, and copy those actions and those words even. And it would help me gain more of an understanding. Like at this Spanish Assemblies of God church I was at, the whole, I'm going to fast coffee this week, or I'm going to fast sugar this week. I'm going to no. Either you fast or you don't.
Right.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
And that was a learning experience for me. And it was like, this is uncomfortable. This is difficult. Well, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a sacrifice. You're denying your flesh. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable. You're supposed to feel stretched. You're supposed to, it's just like lifting weights. You're tearing that muscle so it can rebuild itself.
Yeah.
But we don't take the time to do that spiritual lifting. We don't train our congregations because we just want to keep tickling their ears so they fill the plate every Sunday. Exactly.
And that's what we have to do. We have to take the time to actually build them and get them prepared for the spiritual warfare. Fellas, we way over our time. But it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes God wants the message to get out, and so that it can reach the people and do what we're talking about. Help them get prepared for what's to come. That's it. So, I want to thank both of y'all for coming. We want to thank you, Dr. Gary Chauvin. And if you can put us back on your list, man, to come and join us again, we would love that.
Most definitely. I appreciate it, gentlemen. Definitely. Again, I love conversations.
Dr. Gary Harvey. He preacher man. He has his own podcast called Reflection. If you haven't tuned into it, please tune into him. I have tuned into him. He basically doing the same thing that we're trying to do, get the word of God out there and deal with the issues of this world and how Christ wants to handle them. So, we're going to continue to pray for you, Dr. Gary, your health.
Appreciate that.
We're going to pray. We're going to walk that walk with you, my brother. Be there right there. I already told you, whatever we can do, you let us know. All right. Yep. So if you don't mind, my brother, Dr. Gary, you mind closing us out in prayer?
Yeah, of course. Father, I thank you for the opportunity that we've had tonight. Father, to break bread together and share with my brothers and share with those that are tuned in tonight. Father God, I pray that the word lands on fertile soil. Father, I pray that those that listen to this even at a later time, Father, that you prepare their ears to hear, their minds to understand, their hearts to receive that you have for them. Father God, I thank you for the opportunity here. I pray a blessing on both of my brothers here and their families. Father, their ministries. Father, I just pray increase. And Father, I pray that you continue to put your hand on them and stretch it, Father. Father, just increase their domain, Father. In your precious name we pray. Bless each individual under the sound of my voice and their households as well. Father, you know those things that are unspoken that keep them up at night. I pray that you give them a peaceful, restful night's sleep tonight, Lord. In your precious name, we thank you as we leave this place, but not your presence. We ask that you keep us safe until the next appointed time. In your precious name. And God's people said, amen.
Amen. Ooh, all right, fellas. As always, love God, love your neighbor, and yourself. Love y'all.
All right. God bless y'all.
God bless.
Good night.
It's your favorite big brother, Mr. Church, man. And I'm telling somebody your breakthrough is in your praise, man. Let's go. Give my praise, cause my praise gon' break it. Give my praise, cause my praise gon' break it. Give my praise, cause my praise gon' break it. Give my praise, cause my praise gon' break it.